All right, welcome back. This is Foster the Podcast, episode 2. I am your host, Foster the Prankster. If you're joining us again from last week after that pretty spicy conversation we had, you'll know that we were talking about sort of the tension between the Black and Jewish communities and a lot of the things, historically, and a lot of the things going on currently in relation to the Israel-Palestine situation. During that episode, I made a comment about how it's weird that, we have this disconnect where we can't talk about things that go on or tendencies of the Jewish community, but, Black people always seem to be on the chopping block, and, we kind of are able to sort of face up, own up to our shortcomings and our flaws. And man, was I wrong, because as not no sooner than I posted the episode, I saw a lot of people on social media get into maybe the crazy and ridiculous social justice scheme we've seen thus far. So if you haven't heard, the city council in Philly recently passed a bill that's going to be going to the mayor's desk to be signed. And this bill would ban the use of these full face ski masks in the city that are being used in a lot of crimes that are being committed. The masks are referred to as shiesties, usually named after this young rapper who talks about criminal activity in his music and wears these masks in a lot of his videos and live performances. So real quick, we'll take a look at this news clip.
I have a ski mask on. I didn't cause any harm to anybody. I don't plan on causing any harm to anybody.
You could get fined $250 for wearing a ski mask in public in Philly. The city council just passed legislation banning these in places like parks, daycares, city buildings, and more. The councilman who introduced the bill says it's centered around a public safety issue.
We move forward and we make progress as a people and city when we remove our masks and show who we are with all of our beautiful potential.
This proposal feels more like an attempt to further criminalize young people of color.
The bill was passed in a vote on Thursday. The mayor still needs to sign off, and then it will go into effect immediately.
All right, so as you saw there, the irony is that the guy who introduced the bill to the city council is a Black guy. So I guess, he's a coon or Uncle Tom or whatever they like to say, which is interesting because this is a lot of the same rhetoric that's going around about members of the Jewish community who don't support the Zionism and the Israeli occupation being called anti-Semitic by people who do support Zionism. So I think that's an interesting parallel, but it's funny because none of the people who are upset about this on social media, like not one single person so far has been able to tell me or has been able to comment back to me, how are these masks helping Black kids to not become victims of potential police violence? Do these masks increase or decrease the likelihood of negative police interaction? If everybody's walking around with their face covered, right, and a police officer is getting a call that a store has been robbed or a resident has been robbed or somebody's been shot, and there's, let's say, dozens if not 100 kids running around the city with these masks on, and the only description is it's a Black guy wearing a mask, right? It's the old mistaken identity sort of trope that the Black community often criticizes, that is used as a pretext for police violence. I didn't know it. Dave Chappelle has a joke about it, right? It's like, we're looking for a Black guy between 5'7" and 6'8". It's like this broad window. But if the only description you have is Black, let's not even say Black, just a male with a ski mask, right? And you can only see a very small part of somebody's face, and maybe you approaching them from behind, and you're not sure if this person's armed or whatever. How are police officers supposed to go into the community and do anything? And we could even just take police off the table, right? What about when civilians and lawful 2A people who are lawfully recognizing their Second Amendment rights. What happens when those people get tired of being victimized, right? Like this is a lose-lose situation, because you really might end up having civilians start bodying these black kids just off of a stress response, just off of the fact that they don't want to be victims themselves. And I think that people are looking at this from this very like narrow band, this, calling it anti-black and all this different stuff. I think it's a mistake, man. And I think it's a bad argument. It's more likely to put these kids in harm's way. And, personally, I'm not a big fan of like government overreach. I wouldn't necessarily, be in favor of governments mandating or regulating people's wardrobe or what people wear in general. However, I think it's kind of funny and ironic, the hypocrisy, because a lot of y'all were the same ones that wanted the government to overreach and to seize this level of power when it came to the psychological operation surrounding COVID. And you say that, it's funny because you say that and people are like, oh, so you didn't think the virus was, you think it's all fake and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, nah, I never said that. I've never said that there was no such thing as COVID. I've never, but however, I do believe that there was a bioengineered virus or pathogen that was released to get y'all to panic, to accept being trauma programmed over the next 3 years, because that's really what's been going on. When this stuff first happened, when they really started pushing the masks heavily, I made a few predictions about the social fallout that would occur based on that, just because of, number one, coming up around street guys who kind of like gave me that level of game and awareness, but also just the love and research that I have the love that I have and the research that I've done on behavioral psychology. It's just a topic that I've always been super interested in. So I made a few predictions when they started pushing the COVID masks. One was that child cognitive development would be damaged or delayed, and that has actually happened. These American pediatric associations and places like this have pushed back cognitive milestones for children precisely because of masking and the damage that it has done to kids. I predicted the rise in mental illness, that it would create and aggravate existing mental illnesses like depression and anxiety, and we've seen that those rates have skyrocketed. We've seen suicides go up. But I also predicted the rise in criminality, because it's so easy, right? And I actually thought that this would become an issue way sooner than it has. But we've seen over the past few years, like the flash mobs and people running in stores and grabbing everything off the shelves and running. It was like it was common sense. Like, everybody want to talk about what was common sense during COVID. This was common sense, that if you encourage everybody in the society covering up their face, that you were likely to also encourage criminality and that sort of behavior, because everybody is sort of blending in with each other. If somebody robs you and runs off in a crowd full of other masked people, how are you supposed to pick out the person who actually robbed you, right? So you can look into, you can see examples of this sort of like the behavioral psychology and the damaging that masking has potential of doing. You can look into things like the still face experiment, which, was a thing where they had mothers blankly stare at their babies, their infants, and the stress response that would be caused by this, just by the lack of facial expression. Like the mothers weren't talking, there's no tones or anything like that. It's literally just, they would sit the mother in front of the baby and the baby would be laughing and smiling and doing all this stuff, right? But just the deprivation of, the mother was just staring back, like just a complete blank stare, and eventually the baby just keeps getting escalated and gets upset, and you see the stress response. And that's a natural thing, right? That's a natural thing. Humans are social creatures. We're supposed to be suspicious of anybody without a face, because that's sort of how we engage and how we can try to determine the demeanor and the potential intention of what somebody is doing or what they might plan to do. If somebody's walking around with their whole face covered, their whole identity concealed, it sort of signals to your brain that that person might be about to do something that they don't want to be seen doing, right? So all this stuff was like basic. This was all elementary prior to 2020. The behavioral science was super clear. The behavioral psychology science was super clear on this. The science was also super clear on the idea of surgical masks not preventing or slowing the spread of respiratory viruses. You know, you had 30 years worth of 14 randomized controlled trials that were published by the CDC. Up until 2020, there was no randomized controlled trial, and I still believe that there is not one. Most of the studies that support surgical masks or masking and prevention or slow of the spread of these viruses, those just popped up after 2020, and most of them are what's called mechanistic studies, which is like a computer model. Like you put a variable into a computer and it tells you what should happen. But in the 30 years worth of data up until 2020, there was no data that found, the studies say that although a mechanistic study may support the prevention or the slow of spread or of transmission of a flu-like pathogen due to masks, it doesn't actually shake out in real world trials that have been done. So you have people who, the argument against this, it's ironic because the argument against this will be, well, the government was pushing masks to protect people and to save people. But now you have real world violence that's actually occurring, that's right in your face. It's not an invisible virus. It's not it's not something that a media campaign that's being made to make you fearful and put you in this state. It's actual people being hurt and citizens who are sort of demanding that the city take action and actually protect people, right? So you were against the mask or you were for the mask when it was, a quote unquote public safety issue over a cold virus, but now you're against the mask when it's to, enable law enforcement and people and regular citizens to be able to like actually see and engage with people who might be doing, performing criminal activities. And I got a kind of a funny video that we'll throw in here, an Instagram video that my man sent. We'll take a look at this one real quick. So this is a Instagram prank video that these kids did.
Ayo, uncle. Wait, uncle. I just want to talk. Uncle, wait. Stop.
Man,
I just want to talk. I just want to talk. Hey, I just want to. Uncle, I just want to talk.
I don't need to talk.
Yeah,
I just want to talk, uncle. He's laughing.
So what's going on there, right? Is that dude, is the black dude that come around the corner, is he racist? Is he anti-black for running? When there's a bunch of masked dudes in a tunnel, in an enclosed space. Like, I don't think a lot of y'all, and this is not like a value judgment, I don't think a lot of y'all came up in certain environments. I don't think you have the awareness of what can go on, especially a lot of the female, the black females that I saw speaking on this. I seen a girl that wrote a essay about how the baklava and the ski mask is this symbol of revolution in countries in Africa and the Middle East, and how this is a anti-revolution. These kids ain't starting no revolutions, man. They not going to war with the government, with the police. They not doing none of that. They're harming people in their own community. And I think if you're, especially as a female you're more vulnerable, and I don't understand why you would be throwing a cape on for criminality when anybody that's sort of participating in those sorts of things may victimize you. Like, I don't know why you would be making the case for them being able to conceal their identity and just run around fully masked. I don't understand that. But so the bill is being called anti-black, right? But why is that? And really, when you zoom out, it's because the culture, right, has sold this idea and has promoted these masks to young black kids. White school shooters have worn ski masks during, their mass shootings, but that's not sold as trendy to white kids. It's not sold as cool that they should, go to school in a full face ski mask, right? And so there is this divide. I feel like a lot of the people who are sort of making this case and trying to defend the quote unquote right of people to conceal their face and identity, I feel like they don't work with these communities, or they don't work with kids. They have no experience. Working in childcare and education, I work as a youth mentor, and working in this field is a community in itself. We network with each other. We know people from local community organizations and group homes and all these different moving parts and factors that sort of contribute to community childcare. And we try to keep tabs on kids that are no longer in our care, by reaching out to the social workers and certain people like, hey, yo, how is so-and-so doing? Like, I haven't heard anything in a minute. But a lot of the students that we work with, man, a lot of these kids have, developmental and cognitive issues from either neglect, at home, or, were born on. I had a 10-year-old student who was born on crack. A lot of these kids are not in the mental state or space to really be able to process the stuff that's going on with them. Not saying that that's criminal or whatever. I'm just kind of giving context. But we got students bringing weapons and loaded magazines to school because they think that looks hard. They think that's cool. Not to mention the chronic truancy. You got people talking about, well, we really need resources like mentorship and community centers and rec centers. These kids we got kids that ain't been to school but 3 days so far this school. The school year started in September. We in December, and we got kids that been in the building 3 days. So y'all really think that they're going to be consistently showing up to the rec center or community center and these mentorships and all this stuff? Maybe they will, right? How many days a week do you think they're going to do that? If they do start showing up consistently, how long do you think it's going to take the people who work there to build rapport with them, to actually be able to approach anything resembling a therapeutic conversation? Because a lot of these kids have triggers. A lot of them have the trauma causes them to not really be able to express themselves. You're not just going to be able to sit one of these kids down and, yo, how's it going? Tell me about your home life and blah, blah, blah. Like, nah, man, they'll wild out on you. They might, something might set them off and they suddenly become violent. And I feel like so many of these people who are, again, advocating for this sort of like free for all, anarchist kind of behavior, I feel like a lot of y'all are chronically online, like social media junkies who just, you don't see how any of this stuff ripples out in practice. You don't see the real world application. And, a lot of people who are just, these black academics and intellectuals who will cite, studies and, data and theory and blah, blah, blah. But you don't have the real world application. A lot of y'all are not rolling your sleeves up. You're not getting your hands dirty. You're not down here on the ground working with these kids and this student population. So I totally agree. We need resources like rec centers and community. We need all of that stuff. But these are not magic wands, man. And this is not some sort of overnight cure. What are the citizens of Philly supposed to do while them and their families are at risk of being victimized by these kids and, and adults? What are they supposed to do in the meantime while y'all figure it out? Well, y'all, what y'all, who's funding this? Do y'all even know? Y'all gonna trust the government to fund these programs when you constantly are going on about how they don't care about us and they just trying to kill us and they trying to do all this. So, but now you expect them to fund it. And who do you plan to find to work it, right? What are the incentives for, upstanding black men and women in the community to be doing this kind of work, right? It doesn't pay much. And then you got kids who, again, are mentally, potentially mentally unstable. I'll throw a real world experience in here real quick. We had a student, an 8th grade student last year. I was working with a behaviorist and we were working on getting this kid into a mentorship program. So we sat down with the mentor, met this dude, super cool dude, stand-up guy, who was connected in the street, but he now does this sort of community, has a community organization and mentorship thing. And we really thought that this was going to be like a game changer. This kid was already affiliated, already sort of in the street around older guys who were sort of putting him onto that lifestyle. But and wasn't really coming to school much, but we thought that this situation would really help him, having this older male role model and this sort of group that he could sort of rally around. And so for the first month and a half, it went pretty well. He was responsive and they would the mentor would pick him up and they would go play games or they would do an activity of some kind or whatever, just something to get him out of the environment and get his mind off of the things that were going on at home. And so about a month and a half in, he starts to sort of try to have a real talk with this kid and, hey man, what's going on? I've been hearing some things, you posting some things on social media that are a little concerning. And, I just want to check in with you and see what your plans are for your future. And in response to that, the kid threatened his life, man. Threatened his life. Left the meeting and never went back. And so now you got, not only does this dude have to sort of be on his P's and Q's and watch out for this young man who might try to do something to him just off of being, escalated and triggered. You got to worry about the dudes that are actually in the neighborhood, his quote unquote friends that are trying to pull him into the lifestyle and say, oh, that dude, he a hater. He trying to pull you away, man. That he tweaking, man. Bro, let's go do something about it. So again, what is the incentive? What you have to, and I'm not saying that this stuff that it's no use and that it's helpless and that these kids should just sort of figure it out. But what I'm saying is that you can't keep putting things on the people who are doing the right thing. You can't keep, and again, a lot of y'all, I feel like that are against this mask ban would also be against 2A and, against the idea of self-defense and why are civilians killing black kids. So it's you don't want to do anything. You want to uplift the criminal and you want the people who are good law-abiding citizens to sort of just sit back and be helpless. And, I'm not a religious guy by any means. I grew up going to church, but I do think a lot of the biblical stories and a lot of these ancient texts had a lot of knowledge in them that is sort of applicable in a lot of different scenarios. And when you look at the story of Jesus, before he was crucified, Caesar took basically a vote and asked people if they would rather see Jesus crucified and see this murderer and thief Barabbas, if they would rather see him freed. Which one do y'all actually want to see crucified? Should we crucify the murderer and the robber, or should we crucify Jesus, who is saying these, challenging sort of the political structure of the time, as sort of like this revolutionary figure? And because of the things that Jesus was saying were offensive to people and made people uncomfortable, the people voted to have Jesus killed instead of Barabbas, who was a convicted murderer. And that's really I feel like that's an allegory for a lot of what's going on at this point. Is we're starting to see people throw the cape on for the criminals and expect that the law-abiding citizen is just going to get thrown under the bus and that they're not supposed to want to make a change in the community or want to be safe in their own neighborhood. You know, you're starting to see people condemn the righteous and uplift criminality. And I think we're just on the wrong road when it comes to this stuff, man. And that's really that's kind of all I got for y'all today. I really just wanted to sort of go over this and pick this apart because I feel like this perspective is not being, it's not, we're not having the right conversation here. And even if you disagree with me, I hope that most people can see that, like, yo, this brother's just really trying to like look out for these kids. And because, you know, we can't encourage this sort of bad behavior and just expect that things will go the way we want it to go. You know, the kid in the video, in the news clip, you know, he said like, I wore a mask tonight. I wasn't planning on hurting nobody. And that's fine. I believe him, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, your intention doesn't necessarily matter as much as the way that people might perceive it and the way that they might respond to it. A lot of people using words like, talking about what should happen and what people deserve. Oh, does someone deserve to die just because they wore a ski mask? No, that's not what anybody's saying. That's a ridiculous claim, you know? And I find that not to be in good faith because, you know, that's not what we're saying. That we're not saying that black kids deserve to die for wearing a mask. But the issue is when you put yourself in certain situations and you make certain choices, you don't get to decide how people respond to it. All that happens is that you got to deal with the fallout and the consequences of your actions. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, it's respectability politics and blah, blah, blah. You can keep making excuses, or you can be on the side of trying to influence the correct response and the correct behaviors that will lower the likelihood of black kids being victimized. Is that the goal? Are we actually trying to prevent black kids from getting hurt and having these negative interactions with the police? Or are we just trying to be, contradictory and sort of like anti-establishment and just know everything that, you know, the government's doing is wrong? And, you know, I'm not here caping for the government to step in and do all these things. But also, again, y'all were the same ones that wanted them to sort of take this, this public safety authority to the highest level and start mandating and telling people what they can and can't do. And if we're talking about public safety, I think that it's important to try to do something to prevent people from just running around faceless. And, you know, I think a lot of people's instincts were overridden when the propagandists told you that everybody was going to die if you don't wear a mask and blah, blah, blah. And now y'all acting like this is this like normal thing that people have always just walked around with, you know, full face coverings and concealing their identity at all times. That was not a normal thing from 2019 back. I know this is trauma programming. So what they try to do is like erase your memory and sort of like give you this form of amnesia, right? But that's never been a normal thing. And I don't think that we should keep normalizing it. It's destructive. We need to see people's faces. We need facial expressions, just not even for the criminality aspect, but for people's mental health and for that level of communication. Something like 60% of human communication is nonverbal. So it's very important for us to be able to build and sort of have that level of trust within society. So that's about it, man. This is Foster the Podcast, episode 2. I appreciate y'all if you joining me again. Please like the video, share the video, you know, leave comments. I want to have conversations, man. This ain't just like a soapbox for me to just get my piece off and, you know, condescend to y'all and tell y'all what I think. Like, yo, if you have a point, I'm always willing to be proven wrong, man. So let me know what's going on. Let's talk about it. This is Foster the Podcast, episode 2, signing off. Peace.